what you see is not necessarily what you think you see.
When I think about your work, I almost think about it, it's like almost impossible. This shouldn't exist.
It was a way for me to express myself differently than what I was surrounded with.
What kind of kid becomes a professional sculptor?
Okay. I don't consider myself as a sculptor as such. It's a name that has so much weight. I do fit in a way into that, but not entirely. Stone is not a material that you just work with. It's a material that you need to get to know. We don't talk about process enough. We don't talk about the craftsmanship in the region, in Lebanon, the people behind these works. These are important topics.
Welcome to the Afikra podcast. My name is Mikey Mhenna. Today on this series, I have Najla El Zein, who is a sculptor, artist, based between Beirut and Amsterdam, works all over the world, award-winning sculptor. Najla, welcome to the series.
Hey, Mikey, good to be here.
Great to have you. We've been talking about doing this for a while, so I'm happy that we're finally doing it. For people listening to the podcast, not watching it, you're in your studio. There's all this stuff behind you. Can you actually just situate us? What is all this work behind you? Is it is this your workshop?
Yeah. So we're speaking now in my studio in Amsterdam. These are all my models, and what you see behind are just research projects. Some are works and models of pieces that have been realized. Others are still in the waiting of being realized. And maybe others will, are just there. And I like to have them around. I mean, I have many, many more. And many are just archived. But I do like to have them around me because I have a relationship with these models. They're really important to me. They're part of my thinking process. And it's I like to have them around, yeah. So this is what we have, and we also have some works in glass. These were also part of all my research and development works that I've done in glass to get acquainted with that material. So this is what you're seeing now.
When you do your work, or when you started your career, maybe I'll ask this differently. What kind of kid were you? What kind of kid becomes a professional sculptor?
Okay.
It's a very specific career path. What were you like as a teenager?
I agree. And I think also in my case, my work is very much related to who I am and my personal experience. So I do think about this a lot, and I do try to think about how my upbringing brought me into, thinking what I do today, if there's any relation in that. Well, first, I come from a Middle Eastern family. Both my parents are Lebanese. I grew up in Paris, so I arrived in Paris when I was 2. And I come from a family which is, as all Middle Eastern families, very strong and opinionated. And I also have strong women in my family. I think I was always, I'm more reserved and more of an observant rather than an active part of the family of, what they represent. And I think that my practice found me, and I found myself in my practice. It was a way for me to express myself differently than what I was surrounded with. And my mother was also a keen visitor to museums and to the flea markets, and she would take us with her. I think that probably also, stayed with me, and it was very inspiring for me as a child. But my career path was never linear, in the sense where I don't think I knew when I was a young child that this is what I want to do. I knew that I had sensibility and a strong sensitivity to my surrounding. And I know that I had this art class that my mother took me to, which was to me a great experience because it was almost meditative and it was a way for me to find myself in peace between me and myself. So I do remember clearly that experience having a clear effect on me. Things just grew very naturally for me. And I'm sure that, the way that I was brought up definitely had an influence on me.
Yeah. When did you start actually getting into sculpture? Because I want to talk a little bit about what it actually means to be a sculptor, like what the nuts and bolts, like the unromantic side of it. Because like I remember the first time we met was many years ago in Doha, and we were talking, and you were showing me this work that we'll talk about in a bit, and I was mesmerized as you talked about what the process was like, actually shipping stone and, and working, and the way you worked with craftspeople. So it revealed to me at that moment, like, oh wow, I don't know anything about how this is actually done at this scale. So when is the first time you actually like got into sculpture and working with these raw materials?
So it's funny. I mean, I don't consider myself as a sculptor as such.
Interesting.
I I think it's such it's a name that has so much weight. And I feel I do fit in a way into that, but not entirely. I think I have different because of what I studied, I think as well, I was formed as a product designer and interior designer. My school was quite a conceptual school, so we really were formed to understand the relation between space and object, and how your body interacts with that. I mean, this is how I took it. But the works that I do have more of understanding of that, of the relationship between material and object and function and space. And so, yeah, I don't know if I consider myself clearly as a sculptor. Actually, it's a bit difficult for me to put a word on what I do. So I think the first work that really had an impact on me, but that also had an impact on my practice, was the spoon sculpture that I did in 2010, I believe, or 2011. So this was, I I had an interest in spoons. It's for a long time. I'm just very interested by that object, very simple object that has an interesting shape to me. And what was interesting as well is its reflection, how you look at it from the front. And then when you reverse it, your image is reversed. I mean, there's something interesting for me about that object. And I started experimenting with it. So that also coincided with me moving to Beirut, which I think was really key in my practice, because it allowed me to first it gave me access in a very easy and natural way to craftsmen, talented craftsmen, and a culture of craftsmanship, and which is really embedded in the country. And then at this point, I started experimenting with the spoon, making some prototypes with the materials just to see, what it would look like, and what would be the potential of such a material to really bring it to elevate it in a different way. And while assembling these spoons, one next to each other, I really felt there was something that spoke to me, and I created the spoon lamp.
Yeah. So I'm going to share my screen because I kind of want to look through some of these together. Um, so this is that project. So
Yes, correct.
I'm curious if you tell me about literally, like, how is this actually constructed?
I will guide you through the process of how I make such a work. So it did start with the spoon. So my fascination with the spoon. Then I started making some small prototypes by assembling spoons one next to each other. And then at this point, I realized how the spoon became something else. So it wasn't anymore about that object. It really became more about reflections and a texture. The shape of it is actually, well, it's funny because many people see so many different things. It's like crazy what people have been telling me about what they see in that sculpture. Uh, but to me, I wanted to reflect water, a drop. That's what the spoon really spoke to me. This is what the original prototypes that I had spoke to me about something liquid. So it's a drop, and the way that I shape the drop is with just a basic stainless steel metal structure, and then I welded spoon by spoon on that structure, and then it just took me, into something which I didn't see coming. The richness of the movement, the richness of the texture, of the reflection. I mean, it's really a sculpture that's so alive, also in terms of how it reflects the environment around it, but also how it reflects light. It's a sculpture that changes throughout the day. I mean, it's really, really beautiful. Yeah.
It's so
Um,
funny that I'm glad you said this, because when I look at your work more broadly, like I'll just like sort of scroll through your Instagram. When I look through your work more broadly, the the dominant sort of element to me is movement. There is like everything seems to be like it's being caught in a movement, like whether it's like resting next resting or curling or distorting or um everything somehow seems like there's motion, even though obviously they're static. I mean, is that something that you think about, that you're trying to capture? This like almost I was telling somebody earlier, like when I think about your work, I almost think about it, it's like almost impossible. I'm like, this shouldn't exist. Like it seems impossible when I look at your work. Like how?
yeah, I mean, I think the works are the process is in flux. Yeah, definitely there is movement, and there's also a lot of life into them. And I've been recently, I think, especially with the Qatar project with نحن هي هو, so what we're looking at now. um, it's I became so focused on process and how important process is in making these works, because it's a flux. I mean, the way that the works start and what they end up to become is something, they just come to life through time, basically. And the notion of durability of making these works, and the duration of making these works is also, every decision that we make, every person that's involved in it, this is just a day by day situation where slowly, slowly the works come to life. And I think I really believe this is what gives these works so much movement and life and soul, basically, because of the experience in which they were made and created.
So can you just talk through um going from working with spoons to like a project like Distortion?
So Distortion is a series of benches that I have created for my first solo show in New York,
Yeah.
with my gallery, Friedman Benda. That was in 20. So I started conceiving these works in 2017. The show was in 2018, I think. And then, so the spoon lamp was in 2012. So the time span between the two is not that big, but Yeah. How do I go from the spoon to this? That's your question?
Yeah, I mean, maybe Najla, maybe you think this is a super stupid question. If you do, tell me, because I feel like you're like hearing my questions and you're like, "Shu hal su'al? What a dumb question." Tell me if you think they're dumb, so that I can understand why they're dumb. So I can like
No,
get a
no,
better sense
no.
of.
The question is dumb.
No, but
Uh,
Anja, I don't mean that
yeah.
in a
No,
self-deprecating way.
no.
I mean
I
it in a
understand.
real way. Because like as somebody who's not an artist in this type way, I'm like, is this coming from the same part of your brain? Is this coming from is this a complete departure? Were you saying, I want to move into this different material? Like walk me through that journey.
So the spoon lamp coincided with my move to Beirut. And then this kind of freedom in terms of, oh, like, I can do so many things. And that was not accessible to me before when I was living in Paris. And I also lived in the Netherlands before that. And this work coincided with me becoming a mother, actually. So another big shift in my life. All the works that came before where I was, well, they're very personal, but they were neutral in terms of what the thematics would be. This is the first body of work that was very personal to me. And motherhood is, a beautiful, a, a beautiful experience in any woman's life. But it's also, a big change in terms of the body, in terms of who you are as a person, your identity as a woman, and even more importantly, I think being a mother in Beirut was, and being a wife, and there was that came with a baggage, actually, and a lot of expectations. And I needed to process all these feelings of that change and that evolution of me as a woman, and what it meant, and what was my space, where I would find myself in that. So Distortion was the first time that I was able to take my work into a way where I could process my own emotions and my own experiences. And this is what came out of it. So
Yeah.
it's a series of benches that talk about distortion. So a modification of a body. In this case, it's the rectangle shape of the bench. And what's really interesting for me in this work is also the notion to space, how this bump, which is also very sensual, very feminine. The material is also very soft. So I wanted this kind of contrast between warmth and softness and something very sharp and quite cold. And the relation to space. So the bench allowed me to create that and to create this kind of isolation within space, isolation within the bench between one person and the other people who would sit on it. So the way that you interact with that bench on a personal level, but also on a communal level.
Yeah. Okay, I want to keep on going. I want to look through some of the other ones. So before we get to seductions, which I feel like feels related to the stuff that the work in Qatar, which is how I sort of came across your work. Um, does fragments represent a sort of a bridge between distortion and seduction? At least, sort of like in terms of your work, like, do you feel like, oh yeah, I had to get from this one to that, where um, I look at how these objects interact and sort of like play with each other, and quite literally like sit on each other.
So that's really interesting that you say that, because actually Distortion, Fragmented Pillar, and Seduction were part of the same show. And they are definitely a transition from one to the other. And they all belong to the same moments and the same moment in my life. motherhood, relationships, in my household with, between me as a woman, what it means to be a mother, what it means to be the partner of somebody. And again, also in a context which is Lebanon, which I did not grow in. And which yeah, I needed to figure things out a bit. So fragmented pillar is basically represented what, at this point I didn't know. So everybody, what your foundations are, who you are as a person. At this point, I really was confused with that, with who I am and what I wanted to become, what kind of mother I wanted to become, how people expected me to become, what I needed to become. So at this point, the foundation of who I was really fragilized. And so I made a series of pillars that represents this fragility, but also represents strength. And although the pillars look like they're falling apart, they're still standing up. So it was a way for me to be able to again process these kind of feelings, which were very complex. And then seduction is basically the story of two elements so it starts with seduction F and M. And it's two elements that are separated from each other. So what you're looking at is obviously female form and a male form, but actually gender doesn't really matter to me. But it's really the idea of having two forms, one which is curled into each other, and the other which is, so this is rocking, so it's in movement. And then little by little, these forms come close to each other until they reach the full embrace. And seduction pair 1 is actually the full embrace. And then what would come after F and M would be seduction pair 6, which, yeah. And then seduction pair 4 and 5, and then seduction pair 1.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so soft. It's
Yeah.
insanely soft. Just like the gestures are so delicate. They're amazing. How do you feel when you look at these? Do you feel like you're like looking in your diary?
Diary in terms of what?
Like, does it transport you back to that place and like what you were going through emotionally and what you're going through biographically? You're like, oh, yallah, I remember that.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, it's also, it's each of these works really represent, I think, a time in my life. But also, I mean, when I look at this work, it also shows me the journey that I had with stone in general. So this came before Qatar, and I was still getting acquainted to the material. Qatar, what happened with Qatar, with the scale of of such a commission, it just confirmed, it just created that bond that it was an intense fast forward kind of relationship with stone that I think any artist would get and would need in many, 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 many years of working with this material, because stone is not a material that you just work with. It's a material that you need to get to know, and that requires many, many years, and requires different situations. It's yeah. So Qatar just allowed me to fast forward that relationship, and to get to a point where I wouldn't say not having secrets anymore with stone, but just being really in sync with that material. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love these. There's a few of your projects that look so cute together. Like there's like a cuteness, like the ones that look like amazing beanbags, which I'm forgetting the name. This one,
Yeah, it's the same one. It's
Minora.
group of five.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this project, it looks. Let me actually start with the emotional state. Like, where were you emotionally? Because it feels like now that after talking to you about this, it seems like these are just like glimpses into your diary of like,
Mm.
well, this is where I was at emotionally, so this is what I was producing.
So this work came after Qatar, and it's called Group of Five. It's a work that talks about group dynamics. I'm really fascinated by the relation. I mean, relationships through the body, how you interact with the other, how you interact with your environment. These are really topics that are fascinating to me. I think that are also, in a way, very like directly linked to how I am as well. And what I wanted to create with that work is to have a layered discovery of it. So to me, there's a depth in terms of what happens in between the lines. What you see is not necessarily what you think you see, especially when it comes to this work. What I wanted really is to create a three-dimensional discovery of the work, but also a discovery of the work once you get also closer to it and touch it and sit on it, and you start discovering new layers of connection between these different bodies, different personalities. Yeah, so this is really important to me. It's really important to have this kind of interaction and intimacy with the work, but also to have an interaction with the work by having also other people using the work. So the use of the work to me is key to what the narrative is behind these works, what I seek to create in every project that I make. This sense of relation that you create with that object and how you exist within it and how it exists within your environment.
Yeah, it's like a group photo.
Yeah, it's a group photo.
It's a group photo. You feel like you see the dynamics of this like family of five or a group of five.
Yeah. So just to go back to where I was emotionally with this work, it came after Qatar. Qatar just, I mean, we didn't speak about it. I guess we will later, but it was my first public work, really massive commission, which I was commissioned by Qatar Museums to make. It took us 3 years to produce, and it was created in a context which was really unique, I think, in terms of first what the commission is, the scale of the commission. So, but also it was made right after the port explosion in Beirut, during COVID-19. Financial crisis in Lebanon. I mean, honestly, the most challenging times that Lebanon has faced. And we had this project at hand and we had to make it happen despite the fact that we had no electricity many times or fuel or, I mean, you name it. So to me, this work, which I named نحن هي هو, us, her, him, would be the translation in English, carries so much symbols in terms of how, the process that was involved in making it and in the context in which we had to make it. And Group of Five is basically, I believe, a direct link to that, a direct link to what it means to interact as a group, what it means to create something together, what's the relationship that we have between each other. So I was very interested in the collective notion of relationships. This is why Group of Five happened. And also this is why all the works that I've done in glass as well came out from.
I mean, I'm like mesmerized looking at these photos. completely mesmerized. Let's talk about the Qatar project as well. Since we're here, since they're sort of intertwined. What was the ambition of the project to begin with? Was it this as large of a scale هيك من الأول, like this? Oh my God, we're doing this massive um, undertaking. Was that the idea from the very beginning?
No. So I was briefed to make seating areas. I needed to make seating areas, and I met the landscape architect James Corner in New York. So that was right after my show in 2018. And he introduced me. So Sheikha Mayasa, I mean, this is a direct commission from Sheikha, and she wanted me to be part of the I mean, they were commissioning a few artists to do public works in Qatar, which also coincided with the World Cup. And so I met with James Corner, who introduced me their project, the master planning of their project, which is the Cultural Museum District that basically links the three major museums of Qatar. The main museums of Qatar, you have the National Museum of Qatar, the Islamic Museum, and the Art Mill Museum. And he introduced me the Flag Plaza, which is basically the entrance gate to that cultural museum, and asked me, it would be great if you can provide some seating areas.
Yeah.
And I mean, the master planning is huge, honestly. So,
Yeah.
And to me, it just made sense to create something. Well, first, that was my first public commission. I was like, okay, this is an incredible opportunity. And also the trust that I was given and the sort of carte blanche that I was given just, made me look things in a big way. So I saw this project in different angles. First, in a way that I need to be able to respond to the public work, to the public space, in a meaningful way. So really bring something to the public space, not just provide seating areas, but actually have a story to tell within that public space and what it means to be in a public space. So that was my first approach to the project. And then my second approach was in a functional way that, we are situated in Doha along the Corniche Road. You have some pedestrians that pass along because you have a lot of bikers on the Corniche Road and joggers, but I wanted to create something that would invite people into the Cultural Museum District and to host them. And so I thought about it with an approach that would be like functional in the sense of how can I bring in people in and then lead them into the Cultural Museum, district. And so I proposed my project, which is composed of 13 benches, sculptural benches. Each one of them, they have different relationship with their site. So what we're looking at now is the entrance sculptures, which have the role to attract people in. So they're more vertical in their expression. And then you have the pond benches, which are the linear ones, which are there to allow people to sit on them to face the Flag Plaza. So they have a more because they have events on the Flag Plaza. So I wanted something that would allow people to look at them. So they have a more like a formal appeal with a grand gesture. And then you have the benches under the palm trees, which they also react to the environment. The palm trees provide shades to the plaza. So in a way, the benches also have this kind of elongated look and they're lazier. They turn around the palm trees. And so this is what we've done. This was my project. And then we had to, and then, Qatar Museums loved it, Sheikha loved it, and then we had the go-ahead. So that was great. So I went to the factory, to the factory in Beirut, Marn Group, and I know they're crazy too. And, I said, listen, I have this project. It's massive. let's do it. And we said, okay, let's do it. And you need to understand that this is a factory that, it's a family-run factory. It's not a massive factory. So it was not catered to make a project of such scale. Like the amount of the volume of stones that we had to manipulate to make such a work is few people understand what that means.
Yeah.
And we went on into a journey of 2 years and a half of producing the works on a daily basis. And then crazy things happened in Lebanon. And that created, such a project already puts you in a situation with the people you work with where, you create a bond because it's massive, it's enormous. But also creating it in the context in which we created it, it's the work just became against its own will something else. It just became, like almost a relief to all of us in the sense of working in our bubble, working for a massive work, and we just all felt that the meaning that we were putting into it and the meaning that would be able to be transmitted also in the public space, just, it's at another level of what happened to this project. And this is why I'm so interested in process. I think these are important things to talk about. We don't talk about them enough. We don't talk about process enough. We don't talk about the craftsmanship in the region, in Lebanon, the people behind these works, what they do, who they are, what they bring to the work. These are important topics. And so
on that note, so who were what stages were there in terms of those craftspeople? Like, somebody sees this final product, somebody walks up to the Flag Plaza in Qatar and says, oh my God, this is amazing. Najla El Zein did this, right? I want you to kind of walk through just like the number of steps, like identifying the stone, cutting it down, shaping it in Lebanon, figuring out a way to transport it. Then the people in Qatar who assemble, what are the types of craftspeople that need to be involved in order for this to actually land and become this public installation that, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people will get to enjoy?
The team of sculptors that made this work were there from A to Z. So we installed the work in Qatar. We spent a month there to install the works. That's really important because we know the works, we made them, we gave birth to them. There's no way that we would just send the works and then for them to be installed by anybody else.
But they were shipped fully sculpted, basically.
They were shaped, fully sculpted. But this is the work is huge, so they come in pieces.
Yeah.
They don't come in one piece, So we had to install them back into place there, and of course, any site is different than all other sites, so you have to make adjustments, and then we had to finalize some sculpting then there. But it was really minimal. It was mainly about just reinstalling these. But this is a complex installation because you're talking about almost 20 meter, 30 meter of works in one bench. So it was quite challenging. So it was really great to go with the team to Qatar. Some of them never traveled, so that was really nice as well to kind of have this experience and to be living all together for a month and putting these works. I mean, it was so satisfying to be able to finally put these works because we saw them in steps, right? So you couldn't see them all together. And when you're working on something during 2 years and a half, 3 years, and then finally you have this moment where you see them all together, this is just like it's a défilé of 3 years of work, you know?
Again.
And so it was a proud moment, and yeah, and it's been great. It's been really such a beautiful experience, and also what the leap that me between me and my practice that I achieved with making such a work in stone. It was, I mean, so important to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, before we wrap up, can I ask you, are there any other sort of artists from the region that you look to that you think, I can see their DNA in my work? I can see their influence, whether it's people who work with stone or people, two-dimensional artists or visual artists or however you want to categorize them. But are there people who you feel like influence you in some ways?
I mean, the first direct person who would influence me in many ways, also because we are so close in terms of where we come from. She's also a woman, Saloua Raouda. I look up to this woman in ways that is, yeah, I mean, she's almost like a role model, I
Yeah.
believe. But in her work, definitely. I mean, her work speaks to me so profoundly. I have acquainted, I mean, I saw her work for the first time at the Beirut Exhibition Center. I think that was in 2010. When I visited this exhibition, it was the first time that I was seeing the diversity in her work, that I was being able, that you could really feel that person through every single work that she was making, that she was so generous in terms of what she was able to give us uh, through her artworks, and that spans through her works with stone, with brass, with wood, with tapestries, with fountains, with, I mean, such an incredible person, and Lebanese as well, and also belonging to a generation where female artists, um, and also she was living through the war. I mean, she was practicing during the Civil War, and she was practicing for herself. She didn't have that much recognition back then until she became internationally known. But it's difficult to be an artist. It's a very lonely practice. And for her, also being a mother, living in Beirut in a specific time where women were maybe not as, it wasn't that important for them necessarily to have a practice, and even maybe less in art. And she kept on going, and she created an enormous amount of works. I mean, this is, to me, that shows the strength of who she was as a person. I won't say as a woman, really as a person, and her influences as well. How she brought her own heritage into her work. Yeah, so definitely Salwa Raouda is a source of inspiration. But I also have, many more. I mean, Noguchi, uh, his relationship with the material to me was also his way of seeing material. When I visited as well his foundation in New York, I was just completely taken aback by what a person and personality and he was, and what kind of connection he had with stone, particularly David Hockney. To me, also very important figure for my work and for my way of seeing my works. Actually, that goes back to school, where we had a representation class, which basically taught us to represent things without representing the way they look, but trying to represent them differently. And David Hockney came into my life at this point where I was amazed by how his paintings had this ability to show us things in a different way and to be able to have feelings through his painting. So yeah, I was really struck by his work, and what kind of emotions that created for me. Yeah.
Najla, thanks so much. I really appreciate this. This is a long time coming, so I'm glad that we finally did it.
Yeah, me too, Mikey. That was really nice.